This presentation is for the consumer practice class, and it is on the subject of capitalism as an economic system. First, a little history about capitalism. It first began when people moved from a rural area to an urban setting. Because of capitalism, there was an emerge in mass production. Mass production is the fundamental to a capitalistic industry. Mass production was needed to satisfy the need of the masses. Modern capitalism, on the other hand, was emerging due to the innovation of people. Innovations resulted from the lack of materials. Again, because of mass production, people needed to step up and satisfy the needs of the factory. Fundamentally, capitalism is the idea of better products at a low price. This means that they want to produce the best quality at the lowest price possible. Capitalism is an economic system in which the means of production and distribution are privately owned with the goal to improve profits. The goal of capitalism is to give people the freedom to be able to prosper. This is the American dream, that people can work to be able to better themselves. Capitalism can also be defined as an open competition in the free market. When there is a lack of open competition in the market, like there was when monopolies existed, capitalism only works to destroy itself. There are other types of economic systems, such as socialism. In a socialism economic system, producers possess both political power and the means of producing and distribution of goods. In this economic system, the government is in charge of most resources. This means that the government is in charge of deciding the type of resources used, the way resources are used, and the quantity of production that is produced. In a socialism economic system, there is little say coming from the people. Competition is what drives capitalism. Competition is the rivalry for customers or markets by the producers. Competition is profit motivated. Competition looks for the best of the best. This means the most skilled, the most ambitious, and the most efficient way of producing goods. Competition produces the availability of low prices. It gives the customer a variety of choices, and it produces a market to work as efficient as possible. Next, we will discuss the primary goals of an American society. The first goal is economic freedom. Economic freedom is given to us due to the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights gives us the constitutional right to make our own choices. Our choices means that we are able to choose employment, to change employment if needed, to unionize, to bargain with our employer, or to retire. Because we are able to make our own choices, we can enter into a free enterprise. A free enterprise means that the business, the consumer, and the producers are in charge of their own choices. This means that the government has the least fair approach to the economic system. The government does not have a direct say on how or what producers produce and consumers consume. This is the definition of a free market. People are allowed to make their own choices, to buy what they want or to not buy what they don't desire. The next goal is economic efficiency. This means that this economic system works not by when people are getting better off, making others worse off, but instead making everybody better off altogether. When there is economic efficiency, people are able to live better lives. This is mainly due because people are able to receive the best value for their money. The next goal is public well-being and safety. This is very big on US government. There are many branches and agencies that are in charge of ensuring the public well-being and safety. Because of this, there are many regulations in place and many laws in place to help agency protect the well-being and safety of the customers. The following goal is full employment. Full employment does not refer to a zero rate of unemployment, because that is impossible, but rather a fully utilized labor approach. This means that the most skilled people are being hired, and the technology is inexistent to aid factories in production be as efficient as possible. Things such as flexible wages aid the approach of full employment. Price stability refers to a no change in the price, or that the price change is so small that it doesn't affect the decision-making of the consumers. When there is price stability, there are lower uncertainties in the economic market. When there are lower uncertainties, there is a more economic efficiency. Things that can affect the price stability are inflation or deflation. Inflation refers to a surplus on the demand, and deflation refers to a surplus of supply. Next, economic growth. Economic growth is the increase of production, consumption, and national income. Economic growth is due when the American dream is in place. This means that people want to get better. People want to live a better life, and due to the rise of aspiration, there is economic growth. Economic growth is important because it impacts political and consumer decisions. Next, economic productivity. Economic productivity refers to the output of labor per hour. Labor is important because it represents 70% of business costs. When economic productivity is in place, there is a raise in earnings, meaning people get more for their work. Economic security is a big issue in the US. It serves to protect the economic risk consumers are exposed to. Consumers can do things such as unionize, save money, or invest in insurance. Because economic security is such a big issue in the US, the government has put in place benefits to help people ensure their economic security. Benefits such as Social Security, Medicare, mortgage interest tax deduction, better benefits, student loans, and farms subsidized. The last of the primary economic goals of American society are economic equity and justice. Equity refers to right and wrong, while justice refers to an acceptable rule placed by society. To ensure economic equity and justice, the government takes charge and creates laws and regulations to help ensure this equity and justice. Still, there is inequity in place. Inequity can be seen as how the 1% of American people earn nearly 40% of the national's wealth. This can be seen as an inequity because a small portion of people own a large portion of the nation's wealth. Because of this, there is a barrier that is produced for those in lower status. This means that those in the bottom of the ladder are harder to improve. Which and how resources are used is important for the US economy. For example, the four major factors of production are labor, land, capital, and management. Labor refers to the workforce available. This includes people as well as technological advances. Land refers to the resource available. Capital then refers to the tools and resources available. And management is how well things are allocated. The types of resources available is important to consider when thinking of the US economy. Another thing to keep in mind is availability. Availability goes hand in hand with the population growth. When the population growth is going at a higher pace than the availability of resources, there's a scarcity of resources. Next, let's look at how resources should be considered. Capitalism works in a system of supply and demand. Supply and demand means that production is produced based on the demand of the product. In this case, the consumers have a big say on supply and demand. When they demand something, meaning they put in their economic vote, the supplier then has to give in to their demands. Just as well, when the consumer does not put in their economic vote, then the supplier has to improve or discontinue their supply. Hand in hand with capitalism, democracy is the backbone of US society. Democracy is the power given to the government by the people. This means that even though the people have the final say, they do not impact it directly, rather indirectly, by the election of representatives. Something that might sound surprising is that even though democracy gives people freedom, it can also give them the freedom to restrict others' freedom. To try to stop this, democracy puts in place laws that can help people protect their own rights. Democracy, therefore, is made of laws and representation by the people. The idea before democracy is that the power should go from the bottom up, meaning people should then elect representatives who then influence lawmaking. Like any economic system, capitalism has some shortcomings. And although no economic system is perfect, there are many things that we can do to improve how capitalism works. There are some shortcomings that we are aware of and that we can do certain things to improve them. One big shortcoming of capitalism is that it lacks the mechanism and incentives to attend the basic needs of low-income people. Capitalism works very good to deliver goods to those who can afford it, but forgets of those who can't afford it. Another big problem with capitalism is that it does not give all the information or all the truth. Without this, consumers cannot make the appropriate decisions. Without all the information, it is difficult to make wise spending. Although there have been agencies and laws put in place to help the shortcomings of the safety net that capitalism lacks, there are still some problems regarding safety. Capitalism values more the profit that they can make by making products cheaper, but it does not always keep in mind that when products are cheaper, they lack safety. Capitalism should put more value into the safety of their products. Another big problem that capitalism faces is the mentality that it is allowed to cheat their customers. This includes lying or not telling the complete truth. We can see this a lot with advertisements. Because of the free market, we can't put that much pressure on producers telling the whole truth, but we should. There is no reason why they should have the more power and cheat customers from their rights. Another big problem that is faced with economic systems are the corruptions that slip into it. Corruption then produces a barrier of the free market. This means that people infiltrate the market's decision and takes away the power of the people. An example of this is crony capitalism. The example given in the book is how Asian countries give businesses that they think are important favors or overlook that they have several sets of accounting books. When there is corruption in place, the only thought on people's mind is the money that they can make. Corruption goes as far as infiltrating political systems. This can be seen in every country. In the US, this is referred as lobbyism. Lobbyists manipulate how elections are made by investing money. They believe that if they put in money to re-elect a representative, that they are then obligated to pay up the favor when they are elected. Lobbyists have in mind the well-being of their own business rather than the well-being of the people. Corruption then negatively affects how an economic system works. When there is corruption in place, very few people are rewarded while many are negatively affected. And although many people have tried to fight off corruption, it is difficult when there is a lot of money in play. People value high amounts of money more than they do fairness and equity. It is difficult to value how an economic system such as capitalism takes such a high stand in freedom, but just as well takes in a lot of corruption manipulation. Talking about inequity and injustice, we can discuss how the 1% of wealthy people own up to 40% of Americans' wealth. There is a big discussion if this is due to corruption of the government regulations. Recently, there has been a big discussion about how if the government should give the wealthy a tax break. According to the book, there is a tax avoiding scheme that the 1% is part of. But does this really mean that they're not contributing their fair share? Does the government really put up a higher standard for the wealthy people and leave behind those of low income? Is it really due to the decisions of the government, or is it just how the economic system works? These are all questions that come up when discussing capitalism in America. First, let's discuss if tax avoiding schemes is a real issue in America. According to the book, only 340 of the registered Panama offshore corporations out of the 370,000 companies pay their taxes. This is a mere 0.0009% of the corporations that pay their due share. This again connects to corruption because these companies influence the government elections, and it is the government who decides if corporate gets a tax cut. But in another part of the book, it refers to how the 1% actually pays 26% of the federal income tax. So are they really getting away with a higher privilege, or is it just the government giving them a break for all the input that they put into the economy? A capitalist economic system works by deciding who we elect. Those people that we elect then decide where the tax breaks go. There have been president elections running on tax breaks and others on tax increase. There has always been a discussion into deciding which is the best approach into helping economic growth. Right now, there was giving a tax break to the wealthy, and so far there has not been an economic growth that shows support for this idea of economic improvement. Although there have been cases in the past where giving those wealthy economic breaks through tax evading schemes, then economic profits have increased. The main argument for those in the 1% is that capitalism is bad, that if you work hard, you should keep all your money. Capitalism also is dependent on the freedom. So those in the 1% argue that the government shouldn't get that involved, unless, of course, they're helping them. Finally, as students, what can we do? This class, for example, serves to inform us of all the options of consumer practices available and all the issues that there is that we can work on. I think from capitalism in specific, we should be aware first most about transparency. Transparency is very important for the free trade. and therefore for the free market. As students, I think it's important that we are aware where transparency is and when there is corruption in place. I also believe that it is important to be informed, to take classes such as this so that we know what the problems are, how we can fix them, and the approaches we can take to fix them. I think also as a democracy, it is important to hold people accountable. This includes ourselves. We should be making our voices be heard by voting, and this includes an actual election vote to a representative, a senator, but also our dollar vote. The way we consume also influences the market. Our economic vote is very important and very valuable. But for us to use this vote correctly, we have to be informed of all the options available. And for us to be able to get all the information, we have to hold people accountable. Holding people accountable refers also to the government and to the company. If we elect certain people, we expect them to follow what we perceive as the right decisions. And companies have to be held accountable both by the people and by the government. This is through regulation and again by our economic vote. To conclude this presentation, why is capitalism important? First of all, capitalism is important because it is the way we live. It is the economic system that is acceptable here in the US. And as US citizens or residents, I should say that it is important that we understand how our economic system works. Furthermore, capitalism is the acceptable norm, not only in the US but in the world. There is a lot of backlash for those countries who have a different economic system. Capitalism, therefore, is important because it is the way that we have put as a norm for the appropriate economic well-being. I think capitalism is also important because it gives us the opportunity of improvement. This again refers to the American dream and how the US has this notion that through capitalism, people can improve their way of life. It is understood that if you work hard, you would be able to accomplish what you strive to be. It is important that we understand that capitalism is not perfect, and although many people put in a lot of hard work, they do not get as far as they would like, but it is a definite improvement of their way of life. I think the biggest thing about capitalism is that you are allowed to make your own choices. This again refers to you purchase what you wish to purchase, you make the decisions that you wish to make, and this gives you the freedom that capitalism promises. This freedom encompasses everything. You choose where you live, you choose what you do, you choose the way of life, you choose everything about your life as a whole. You can also choose not to improve. You can choose to live a very low quality of life, and that's your choice that capitalism and a democracy society give you. I think because of all these reasons, capitalism is important, and it is also the best economic system available to us as of now. Now we should consider the future of capitalism. We should aspire to have a free society. This means that all the people and all the corporations should stay within the rights of their freedom. It also means that the government should not get more involved as technological improvements advance. As a fact, the government should step back while technology advances. On the other hand, we as a society should not fall back to all mistakes such as monopolize certain resources. Monopolies have demonstrated that it destroys capitalism as an economic system. The future of capitalism isn't within our hands, and therefore we should take actions to make capitalism the best it can be. This is the end of the presentation for the Consumer Practices class on capitalism. I hope that you found this information helpful, and you have now cleared up what capitalism as an economic system means. These were the resources used for this presentation.